If you keep up with trading card news, you might have seen earlier this week on January 29th, MetaZoo Games announced that they were closing shop. According to the company's founder, quote, the company was faced with logistical and product gridlocks that posed too great a challenge to the company for it to continue. MetaZoo is a newer trading card game that was launched in 2020, right in the midst of the COVID card game boom. They had a Kickstarter campaign. The Kickstarter went well, and they managed to convert that into a full release, and then continued to release multiple sets, pre-constructed decks, all that over the next few years. Obviously, I don't have a ton of reach, and I've never made a video like this before, but I'm hoping maybe some people will see this just because it's associated with card game news, and maybe they'll check out MetaZoo as a result, because I do think it's a game worth checking out, and if enough people get interested in the gameplay of MetaZoo, maybe a company will see that in the future and decide to invest in the IP and keep it going. I want to say up front that this is not a MetaZoo finance video. So much MetaZoo content on the internet and just buzz in general is financial related, and I'm not into all that. I want to talk about the gameplay. I think part of the reason that I didn't get into MetaZoo for a long time, and I think this is true for a lot of people, is because it was so associated with, investing and that kind of thing. It just didn't seem like there was much game underneath it if all people were talking about was buying sealed product and valuable cards. This is also not a competitive video. I have never been a competitive MetaZoo player, and I can't really speak to that whole scene. My interest in the game is purely casual. However, it's always been my intention to make MetaZoo videos on this channel. If you look at our channel trailer, you'll see me holding up a MetaZoo card. Some of those videos are still in the works. I'm not planning to give up on MetaZoo just because the manufacturer is shutting down. So, what is MetaZoo? MetaZoo is a trading card game. It's functionally quite similar to Magic the Gathering. You have things like lands. You use them to pay the costs for creatures and spells. There are what are basically colors, just like Magic the Gathering. It's very much a descendant of Magic in terms of the resource system, the way the game is set up, all of that. The hooks for MetaZoo are that it's about cryptids, mostly North American cryptids, fantastical animals, and the card design is rather eye-catching. MetaZoo cards are these hodgepodges of different mechanics, incorporating things like fourth wall breaking effects and status effects to really add up to dense, complicated cards. I'm going to be honest, these card designs are not going to be for everybody. There is an Avengers level mashup of card game mechanics on these cards. I also think they get a little too cute with the terminology. Like, card games, in a lot of ways, use a lot of the same terms for things. MetaZoo doesn't do any of that. Your hand is called a chapter, drawing is called bookmarking. It just gets a little confusing when you're reading all this different text on cards than what you're typically used to. Now, with all that out of the way, let's talk about why I think you should play MetaZoo and what I think makes it worth it. The cards are complex, but I think it fits the core concept of the game really well. You're talking about mythical creatures, a fantastic setting. Of course, they can do a lot of things. The status effects mostly make sense in the context of the cards that you're playing. There are tons of bizarre quirks to the game, not just in terms of individual card designs, although there are plenty of those. The fourth wall effects on cards lead to really quirky gameplay in individual cards, but the overall design is also unlike anything else you've ever played. I already mentioned that the terminology is different, but you're also talking about a game with multiple different zones that act as graveyards depending on what's going into them, and multiple different cards that interact with those different graveyards uh, to build up a sort of deck synergy. It's a little hard to explain without just holding up the MetaZoo rulebook, but basically, you're not going to have cards that are good with the graveyard in general. They're going to be good with either the afterlife or the cemetery or limbo. And I just think that's a really unique idea compared to a lot of trading card games where, as we know, the graveyard just functions as a second hand and can hold anything and you can get anything back out of it. I also love that individual cards have specific limits printed on them. Like one card, you might be able to run 10 in a deck, whereas a different card, you can only run one. And this does a lot to balance the game and prevent individual cards from becoming too broken. I like that there are a lot of playable strategies, at least at a casual level. MetaZoo is one of the only trading card games I can think of that won't actively punish you for finding cards that you like and building a deck out of them. There's a good chance, and again, at a casual level, that you're going to be able to compete with what your opponents are doing. Obviously, there's power level outliers in terms of cards that are much more powerful than other cards. But overall, I think the playing field is relatively level for a trading card game. You also have the art, which I think is phenomenal and just really charming. The card design overall really strikes a chord with me personally. Again, it's not going to for everybody, but I think if you're drawn in by the card design, you should definitely take a look at playing the game because they're one and the same. They work together beautifully. I really like that the complexity of cards and just the number of things they can do. It's almost sort of harkens back to playground card games, playing Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic or Pokemon when you're a kid and you don't really know what the cards do, and you say, "Oh, I attacked your guy. Now he's burned because I'm a fire type." Well, that is actually a thing in the rules in MetaZoo, and I just like that they've been able to capture that spirit and codify it. It takes a lot of mechanics from other card games, but it has its own personality and vibe in a way that I don't think you can say about every card game, even card games that are successful right now. Some of them feel a little samey. They feel like they've been built out of the same mechanics, and then the card pool is just different. MetaZoo has its own vibe, its own personality. It's a very unique experience, and the similarities that it has with other games, in my opinion, just make it easier to learn and pick up. Obviously, we'll always be able to play MetaZoo with the existing card pool, but I'm hoping that if there's enough of a push online from MetaZoo fans, maybe somebody will see that there's still interest in the game, and want to keep making the game and fix some of the logistical issues that MetaZoo Games was saying that made them decide to close shop in the first place. So yeah, that's it. I hope you will check out MetaZoo, and we'll see you next time.